A German shepherd stormed into the hospital alone, carrying a bleeding girl on his back. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is she alive?" Doctors froze. No one knew where he had come from. There was no owner, no warning. His eyes were locked on the emergency ward, as if he already knew exactly where to go. Doctors and nurses rushed forward, but the dog growled protectively, refusing to let anyone get close to her. This dog wasn't attacking, he was begging for help. When a nurse finally reached toward the girl, the dog growled again, not in anger but in desperation, as if warning them, "Hurry, she doesn't have much time." One nurse, trembling, whispered, "What happened to her? Where are her parents?" No one knew. No one understood. Something terrible had happened to this child, and this dog was her only witness. But no one could imagine the truth that was about to unfold. What happened next left the entire hospital in shock. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The hospital lobby buzzed with its usual weekday chaos. Wheelchairs rolling, monitors beeping, voices echoing off polished floors. No one noticed the doors slide open at first, but then a ripple of silence swept across the room. A massive German shepherd limped inside, his coat dusty and his breathing strained. Draped across his back was a little girl, unconscious, her tiny arms dangling lifelessly. People froze mid-step. A nurse dropped her clipboard. Conversations died instantly. No one could understand how a dog had carried a child straight into the emergency ward. The dog didn't bark, didn't look around, didn't hesitate. He moved with deliberate purpose, as if he had walked these halls 1,000 times. His eyes stayed fixed on the trauma unit entrance, ignoring the gasps rising behind him. A man in a wheelchair covered his mouth. A receptionist whispered, "Is she alive?" A doctor stood motionless, trying to process what he was seeing. The girl's hair was tangled, her dress torn, and her face dangerously pale. Yet the dog carried her with impossible gentleness, each step careful and protective. Within seconds, a burst of movement erupted. Nurses rushed forward, their instincts kicking in. "Someone get a gurney," one yelled. But when they approached, the dog growled softly, not aggressive, just a warning. His body lowered protectively, shielding the girl. The staff stopped instantly. The dog's eyes darted toward anyone who came too close. It wasn't rage. It was fear. Fear that someone might harm her again. The crowd exchanged confused glances. Who was this child? How long had she been hurt? And why did this dog act like her guardian? A security guard hesitated at the edge of the growing crowd. "Do we need to contain the animal?" he whispered to a doctor. But even he sensed this wasn't an ordinary situation. The dog's legs trembled with exhaustion, yet he refused to let the girl slip from his back. A paramedic crouched low, speaking softly, trying to calm him. The dog's ears twitched, but he didn't back away. He merely shifted, ensuring the girl stayed balanced, never letting anyone touch her until he was certain they meant no harm. Moments later, a young nurse named Emily stepped forward slowly, palms raised, voice gentle. "It's okay, boy. We're here to help her." The dog's tense muscles eased slightly, his eyes softening at her tone. Emily reached out carefully, giving him time to decide. Finally, he lowered his head, a silent sign of trust. Emily lifted the unconscious girl into her arms, but the dog stayed close, refusing to let her out of his sight. No one in the hospital had ever witnessed anything like this. Emily held the unconscious girl tightly, feeling the child's faint, shallow breaths against her shoulder. But the moment she turned toward the emergency wing, the German shepherd pressed forward, walking beside her, refusing to break even a step of distance. Staff members stepped aside, whispering in disbelief as the dog stayed glued to Emily's movements. His tail was low, his ears alert, eyes tracking every motion around them. Emily sensed this wasn't just loyalty, this was urgency. The dog wasn't accompanying her. He was guarding her and the girl. The hallway lights reflected off the polished floors as Emily hurried toward the trauma room, her heart pounding. The dog matched her pace, weaving protectively around her legs whenever someone approached too quickly. A doctor rushed beside them saying, "We need to examine her now." Let's move. But when he tried to take the girl from Emily's arms, the dog's head snapped up, a sharp warning rumble vibrating in his chest. The doctor jerked his hands back instantly, startled. It was clear. The dog chose Emily alone. Inside the trauma room, machines beeped steadily as Emily placed the girl gently on the bed. The dog positioned himself near the foot of the bed, standing stiff, watching every movement of the medical team. One nurse whispered, "Is he trained?" Another murmured, "He's acting like he knows exactly what's happening." Emily approached slowly, kneeling beside him. She extended her arm again, just as she had in the lobby. "You did the right thing bringing her here," she said softly. The dog's breathing steadied, recognizing her voice. A male nurse entered with medical equipment, but the dog's low growl stopped him cold halfway across the room. Emily stood up immediately. "Wait, he's scared. Let him know we're helping," she insisted. The nurse nodded, lowering his posture, then moved slowly, showing his hands. After a tense moment, the dog allowed him to pass, though his gaze never wavered. His body language shifted, less aggressive, more anxious. He wasn't trying to attack anyone. He was terrified of losing her. Minutes later, the doctor returned, speaking urgently to Emily. "We need to move her into imaging to check internal injuries." The dog stepped forward instantly, blocking the door with his body. Emily knelt again, placing both her hands gently on his face. "She needs this, okay? I'll stay with her the entire time." The dog blinked slowly, something in her tone calming him. After a long hesitation, he stepped aside, though his paws shook from exhaustion. Even injured, even afraid, he followed as they wheeled the little girl away, determined not to leave her side. The trauma room filled instantly with motion. Doctors snapped on gloves, nurses adjusted monitors, and equipment beeped to life as Emily stayed by the girl's side. The German shepherd planted himself at the foot of the bed like a silent sentinel, eyes tracking every pair of hands that moved near the child. The lead doctor, Dr. Harris, leaned over the girl, checking her vitals, frowning at the numbers. "She's severely dehydrated," he muttered. "Possible shock." Emily swallowed hard, brushing dirt from the girl's hair. Something about her injuries didn't look accidental, and the dog's unsettled pacing confirmed it. As Dr. Harris lifted the girl's sleeve, the room felt tense. Dark bruises, shaped like pressure marks, ran across her forearm, some old, some disturbingly fresh. A nurse whispered, "This wasn't a fall." The dog let out a low whine, nudging the side of the bed as if urging them to understand. The doctor checked her legs next. More bruising, small scratches. Rope-like indentations around her wrists. Emily's chest tightened. "Someone restrained her," she whispered. The medical team exchanged worried glances, realizing this child hadn't wandered into danger. She'd been trapped in it. Dr. Harris continued his examination, lifting the girl's torn dress slightly to assess her abdomen. His expression darkened immediately. "Everyone, prepare imaging and labs now. We need to know what we're dealing with." Emily held the girl's hand gently, noticing a faint tremor beneath her fingertips, proof she was fighting to hold on. The dog let out another soft whimper, stepping closer until his snout hovered beside the girl's arm. A nurse attempted to give him space, but he wouldn't move. His entire posture screamed protectiveness mixed with fear. The team carefully transferred the girl onto a mobile bed for scans. As the bed rolled forward, the dog instinctively followed, tail low, breathing heavier than before. "Is he injured too?" someone asked. Emily glanced down and noticed dried blood near his hind leg. "He must have gotten hurt bringing her here," she said, voice tight. A nurse approached to examine him, but the dog snapped his head upward, defensively, forcing the nurse to back away. Emily knelt in front of him. "Let us help you too." He blinked, torn between pain and duty, choosing the girl again. Before they could leave the trauma room, Dr. Harris paused, staring at the little girl's chest as the monitor flickered. Her heart rhythm dipped dangerously low. "We're losing her! Move now!" he shouted. The room erupted into action again. Emily pushed the bed faster while the dog hurried beside her, stumbling but refusing to stop. Staff shouted instructions, doors swung open, and alarms echoed through the hallway. The dog let out a distressed bark, the sound sharp and desperate. Whatever this child had endured, whatever danger she had escaped, They were now in a race against time to save her life. The hallway shook with urgency as staff rushed the girl toward the imaging wing. The German Shepherd kept pace beside the gurney, limping but refusing to fall behind. His breaths were ragged now, each inhale sharp, each exhale trembling. Emily noticed the way his hind leg dragged slightly, leaving faint streaks on the polished floor. "He's hurt worse than we thought," she murmured. But still he pushed forward, eyes locked on the girl, as if his presence alone kept her alive. Determination held him upright, even as his strength rapidly faded. They reached the imaging room doors, where only essential medical staff were allowed beyond the threshold. As the team rolled the girl inside, the dog attempted to follow, but a nurse gently blocked his path. He let out a protesting whine, pawed at the door, and pressed his head against the metal seam. Emily knelt beside him, placing a calming hand on his chest. "They'll help her," she whispered. But his body trembled uncontrollably, torn between trust and fear, loyalty and pain. When Emily stepped away to assist the doctors, the dog staggered sideways. His legs buckled for a moment before he caught himself, but it was clear his endurance was slipping. A couple in the waiting area watched him with concern. "That dog carried her in here," a man whispered. "How far could he have come like that?" Another responder approached to check on him, but the dog lifted his head weakly, issuing a tired warning growl. Not out of aggression, out of desperation. He still believed he needed to protect the girl. Seconds later, his strength finally gave out. With a soft, heartbreaking thud, the dog collapsed onto the tile floor. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his body heaving with exhaustion. Emily rushed back, dropping to her knees beside him. "Hey, hey, stay with me," she pleaded, running her hands along his fur. Beneath the dirt and dried blood, she felt heat. Too much heat. His muscles twitched from overexertion. His heart hammered wildly. This dog hadn't just been running. He had been carrying the girl for miles. A paramedic knelt beside Emily, scanning the dog's condition. "He's severely dehydrated. He needs fluids and treatment now." Emily nodded urgently. "But he won't let anyone near him unless he trusts them." She looked into the dog's tired, glassy eyes. "Let us help. You've done everything you could." Something softened in his gaze. Exhausted recognition. Slowly, painfully, his head lowered onto the floor. He didn't resist as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Even unconscious, his face remained pointed toward the imaging room door, still trying to watch over the little girl he had fought so hard to save. Inside the imaging room, the medical team moved with fierce urgency. Machines whirred to life as the girl's fragile body was positioned carefully beneath the scanner. Emily stood beside her, holding her small hand, feeling how cold it had become. "Stay with us, sweetheart," she whispered. Dr. Harris monitored the screens, his brow tight with concern. Shadows and irregularities appeared instantly. "There's swelling, internal bleeding, possible abdominal trauma." Emily's heart sank. The girl wasn't just injured. She was deteriorating fast. Outside, faint barking echoed from the hall, the dog fighting consciousness even in his weakened state. Minutes ticked by like hours. The scan ended, and the team rushed the girl to a prepared emergency bay. Emily stayed close, refusing to let go. The dog, still on his own stretcher, lifted his head weakly as she passed. His eyes softened, a faint spark of recognition flickering through pain. "She's fighting," Emily murmured, brushing her fingertips against his cheek. The dog's ears twitched, as if reminding her he already knew. He had carried that hope on his back all the way to safety. In the emergency bay, nurses inserted IV lines and monitored her unstable vitals. Dr. Harris dictated quick instructions: blood transfusion, warming blankets, airway support. A nurse checked the rope marks on her wrists again, shaking her head. "Someone caused this," she whispered. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. She smoothed the girl's hair gently, her voice barely audible. "You're safe now. We'll protect you." The girl didn't respond, only her chest moved slightly, each breath shallow and fragile, like she was clinging to life with the last threads of strength. Outside the room, a cluster of doctors discussed the scan results. Emily listened anxiously as Dr. Harris explained. There's internal rupturing, likely from blunt trauma. She needs surgery fast. Another doctor asked, is she stable enough? Dr. Harris hesitated. Barely. But without intervention, she won't make it. Emily closed her eyes, letting the weight of his words settle. She looked back at the girl, so small, so worn, yet somehow still fighting. It made Emily's resolve harden. She stepped forward. We need to move now. The dog brought her here for a reason. We can't fail them. The team wheeled the girl toward the surgical wing, alarm sounding as her vitals dipped again. Emily walked beside her, keeping a hand over the girl's, steady and reassuring. As they passed the dog's stretcher, he tried to lift himself again, whining softly. Emily touched his paw. We're taking her to surgery. She's not alone. His body relaxed, trusting her completely. The doors to the operating room swung open. Emily took a deep breath, stepped inside with the team, and whispered one final promise to the unconscious girl. We'll save you. While surgeons worked behind sealed doors, the hospital corridor filled with tension. 2 security guards approached the stretcher, holding the weakened German shepherd. We need to move the dog to an isolated room, one guard said. This is still a restricted area. The other nodded, stepping closer with cautious hands. But the moment they touched the stretcher, the dog's eyes snapped open. A deep, warning growl vibrated from his chest. Despite his exhaustion, he pushed himself halfway upright, refusing to be taken anywhere away from the girl's surgical room. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. He's injured, one argued. He needs medical attention too. But the dog's growl deepened, echoing down the hallway. Emily hurried out from the surgical wing after hearing the commotion. Stop, she called, placing herself between the guards and the stretcher. He's terrified. Don't force him. The guards lowered their hands, watching as the dog tried to stand. Even though his legs shook violently under his weight, he wasn't acting out of aggression. He was acting out of instinct, refusing separation. Emily knelt beside him again, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. She's still in surgery, she whispered. The dog's breathing turned rapid, anxious, his gaze flicking toward the door officials had closed behind Emily moments earlier. Suddenly, his ears twitched. His posture shifted sharply. He turned his head toward the far end of the hallway, staring intensely. Emily followed his eyes, confused. What is it? She murmured. The dog let out a short, sharp bark, a different sound from before. Not fear, not anger. A warning. The guard straightened. Should we check it out? One asked. Emily nodded. Something's got his attention, and he hasn't been wrong once. The dog barked again, louder this time, and tried to leap from the stretcher. His body failed him. He collapsed back, whining in frustration. Emily placed a calming hand on his head. We'll see what you're trying to tell us, she said softly. She gestured for one of the guards to walk with her toward the direction the dog had indicated. The hallway suddenly felt colder, quieter, tense. As they rounded the corner, the hum of hospital equipment faded beneath an eerie silence. A supply door sat slightly ajar, though it was supposed to remain locked. Emily frowned. This wasn't open earlier. The guard pushed it wider, revealing scattered items. A tipped cart, a fallen box, a dropped keyring. Emily's pulse quickened. Someone had been here. Recently. She looked back toward the dog, who barked again, louder, urging them on. Whatever had happened to the girl, whatever danger she had escaped, it seemed the threat wasn't as far away as they thought. Emily rushed back toward the dog, her heartbeat pounding louder with every step. The guards followed close behind, still unsettled by what they had found in the storage corridor. The German shepherd, though weak and barely conscious minutes ago, lifted his head the moment Emily reappeared. His ears perked, nostrils flaring as if he were searching for a scent only he could recognize. Struggling, he tried once more to rise to his feet. Easy, easy, Emily whispered, worried he might collapse again. But he wasn't listening. His instincts were igniting again, pushing through every ounce of pain. With a trembling determination, the dog slid off the stretcher, landing unsteadily on the tile floor. His legs quivered, but he forced himself upright, eyes locked in the same direction he had barked earlier. Emily stepped beside him, confused. Do you smell something? Someone? The dog took a shaky step forward, then another, following a scent trail only he understood. The guards exchanged glances, one muttering, "This dog just woke from near collapse and he's tracking?" Emily nodded tightly. "Whatever he's sensing, we need to follow him." The dog limped down the hallway, every step painful, yet every movement deliberate. His nose hovered close to the floor, then lifted toward the air vents, tracing an invisible path. He led them past waiting rooms, past vending machines, past startled patients who stared as the weakened but determined K9 pushed forward like a soldier on one final mission. At one intersection, he paused, sniffed deeply, and growled. The sound was low, dangerous, and filled with recognition. Emily's breath hitched. "He knows this scent? He smelled it before." The dog abruptly turned left, dragging himself toward the emergency exit at the far end of the corridor. The guards rushed ahead and pushed the door open. Immediately, cold air rushed inside. The dog limped out into the dimly lit back area behind the hospital, his breathing heavy, but his eyes sharp. Just a few meters away, near a patch of unmowed grass, lay something partially hidden beneath leaves. The dog hobbled toward it, nose touching the ground. Emily crouched beside him and froze. It was a piece of rope, identical to the marks around the girl's wrists. Beside the rope lay footprints, small, frantic ones leading toward the hospital, and larger ones trailing away into the trees. Emily's heart pounded. "She escaped, and he followed her," she whispered. One guard knelt to inspect the ground. "Whoever did this, they were here, recently." The dog sniffed the rope, then barked sharply, turning toward the dark forest beyond the hospital fence. His stance shifted again, no longer weak, no longer desperate, focused, driven. Emily swallowed hard. The message was unmistakable. The dog wasn't just leading them to evidence, he was leading them to the person who had hurt the girl. The dog stepped closer to the forest edge, nose twitching as he inhaled deeply. His fur bristled, a low growl vibrating through his chest. Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. The guards moved their flashlights toward the dense brush, revealing trampled grass and broken twigs scattered in a chaotic trail. "Someone ran through here," one guard muttered. The dog advanced, limping but determined, until he stopped beside a patch of disturbed soil. Emily crouched, brushing away leaves, and froze. Embedded in the dirt was a scrap of red fabric, torn violently, its threads tangled with dried mud. One guard lifted the fabric piece carefully. "This looks like it was yanked off during a struggle." Emily's breath caught. It matched the color of the girl's torn dress. The dog sniffed the fabric intensely, then barked once, sharp and certain, before pulling forward again. They followed him deeper into the clearing. The further they stepped, the quieter the world became. No wind, no rustling, no insects, just an eerie stillness, as if the forest itself remembered something terrible. A few steps later, the dog halted again, digging frantically at the ground despite his injured leg. Emily knelt beside him, pushing aside branches until her fingers brushed something cold. It was metal, smooth, bent, partially buried. She lifted it slowly, squinting through the dim light. "It's a flashlight," she whispered, broken and covered in mud. A guard examined it under his beam. "This isn't from the hospital. Someone dropped it during the chase." The dog barked again, louder this time, shifting toward a nearby tree trunk. Emily followed his gaze and felt her stomach twist. Ropes hung loosely from a thick branch, frayed ends dangling, matching the ones found earlier. They approached cautiously. Beneath the branch lay signs of a struggle, deep shoe imprints, claw marks in the dirt, and disturbed foliage circling the area. The guard exhaled sharply. This is where she was kept. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. "He must have found her here," she whispered, glancing at the exhausted dog beside her. "He freed her and carried her all the way to the hospital." As if responding, the dog nudged her hand gently, then lifted his head toward a second trail leading deeper into the woods. Fresh footprints, heavy, angled, hurried, disappeared into darkness. The guards exchanged tense glances. "Whoever did this didn't leave willingly," one murmured. "They ran." Emily tightened her jaw. "And they're still out there." The dog stepped toward the footprint trail again, trying to follow it despite his trembling legs. Emily placed a hand on his back. "Not now," she said softly. "You've done enough." But the dog whined, eyes pleading, as if begging them to continue the pursuit. The guards looked at each other before one lifted his radio. "Dispatch, we need a search team in the forest immediately. Possible location of suspect." And as the forest lights flickered on, the truth hit everyone. This wasn't just evidence. This was the beginning of the hunt. Back at the hospital, the dog was returned to his stretcher, though he refused to lie down until Emily gently guided him. His chest rose with uneven breaths, exhaustion finally beginning to overwhelm him. A veterinarian on staff arrived, kneeling beside him with cautious hands. "Let's check his chip," she murmured. Emily stroked the dog's head reassuringly as the scanner beeped softly. Seconds later, the vet's face shifted from concentration to shock. "This isn't just any dog. He's registered as K9 Valor, a retired police dog declared missing 3 weeks ago." Emily's breath caught. "Missing? What happened to him?" The vet pulled up the report. "It says he disappeared during a search operation. They assumed he fled or was injured and lost." Emily looked at the dog with new understanding. He didn't run away. He was searching. Valor lifted his head weakly, leaning into her touch. His eyes held a depth of exhaustion and a loyalty so strong it borderlined heartbreaking. This wasn't a random hero. This was a police dog still performing his duty long after retirement. One of the guards stepped closer. "If he was missing all this time, then he must have been out there when he found the girl." Emily nodded slowly. "He stayed with her," she whispered, "protected her, fought for her, and carried her here." The realization washed over everyone around them. Valor hadn't brought the girl because he found her by chance. He had chosen her. He had refused to leave her side, even when injured, starving, or exhausted enough to collapse. His mission had shifted from serving the department to saving one small life. The vet listened to Valor's heartbeat, shaking her head softly. "He's severely dehydrated. Multiple muscle tears. Possible fractures. This level of damage, he shouldn't have been able to walk, let alone carry a child." Emily's eyes stung. "But he did." The dog's ears twitched as if he recognized her voice, his gaze flicking again toward the surgical wing, where the girl fought for her life. Even hurt, even trembling, he tried to push himself up again. Emily pressed gently against his shoulders. "Rest, please. She's safe now." But Valor didn't relax. Not truly. His eyes stayed fixed on the surgery doors, waiting for the girl he'd carried out of the forest. The vet sighed softly. "His loyalty is extraordinary," a guard added. "This dog didn't just save her. He refused to give up." Emily brushed her hand over his fur, voice barely above a whisper. "You're her protector, and you didn't fail." Valor blinked slowly, leaning into her touch, his body finally surrendering to the weight of exhaustion. Yet even as his eyes closed, his ears stayed tilted toward the surgery room, still listening for the child he had nearly died to save. The forest was alive with sounds the night everything changed. Wind rustled through the branches, owls called from the distance, and leaves crunched beneath small, frantic footsteps. The little girl stumbled through the darkness, her wrists raw from the rope she had finally slipped out of. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. But she had no light, no strength, and no one to protect her. Her breath came out in sharp, trembling gasps. Behind her, branches snapped. Someone was following. Her heart pounded louder than the forest itself. She tripped over a root and fell hard, scraping her knees. Pain shot through her legs, but she pushed herself up again, desperate. A faint beam of moonlight caught the red fabric of her torn dress. She pressed a hand against her bruised ribs, whimpering softly. The forest terrified her. Every shadow felt like danger. Every sound felt like a threat. She stumbled deeper into the darkness, unaware that a pair of glowing eyes was watching her from the trees, not hunting her, protecting her. K9 Valor had been trailing her for miles. Valor had escaped a trap earlier that day, his leash cut, his uniform torn, his mission incomplete. He had lost his original team, but his instincts wouldn't let him stop searching. When he heard a child's faint cry, he followed the sound relentlessly. Each whimper drew him closer until he found her on the forest floor, shaking with fear. He approached slowly, carefully, lowering his head so she wouldn't be afraid. The girl looked up, eyes wide, then collapsed into his fur, sobbing. The dog pressed against her gently, understanding everything without a single word. Moments later, twigs snapped again, the same footsteps returning. The girl stiffened in terror, clutching Valor's neck. Valor's body tensed instantly. He positioned himself between the girl and the direction of the approaching danger. A shadowy figure moved between the trees, searching, muttering angrily. Valor growled, low, deep, unmistakable. The figure froze, realizing he was no longer alone with a defenseless child. When the man stepped closer, Valor leapt forward with a commanding bark that echoed through the forest. The man cursed, stumbling back, tripping over roots before sprinting away into the darkness. Once the threat was gone, Valor returned to the girl, nudging her gently. She cried into his fur again, whispering, "Please don't leave me." Valor didn't hesitate. He pressed his side against her, encouraging her to climb onto his back. She was too weak to walk. Every part of her body shook with exhaustion. With trembling hands, she wrapped her arms around his neck. Valor steadied himself, feeling her weight settle. He took his first step, slow, careful, protective, beginning the long journey towards safety. The forest stretched endlessly before them, but he refused to stop. Hour after hour, Valor carried her through thick underbrush, steep hills, and cold streams. His muscles trembled, his legs sometimes buckled, but he pushed on. Whenever the girl slipped, he stopped, adjusting himself so she wouldn't fall. When she whimpered in pain, he licked her hand comfortingly. At one point, she whispered, "Thank you. Please don't let me die." And Valor responded the only way he could, by moving forward, step after brutal step, his determination stronger than the weight crushing his body. Just before dawn, he saw lights in the distance, the hospital. With the last of his strength, he headed straight toward it. The surgery lights dimmed, and the tension that had filled the hall slowly loosened as the operating room door swung open. Dr. Harris stepped out, pulling his mask down, exhaustion heavy on his face. Emily stood immediately, her heart pounding. "Is she?" she whispered. The doctor nodded. "She made it through the operation. She's stable for now, but very weak." Relief washed over Emily, nearly buckling her knees. She rushed inside with permission, finding the small girl resting beneath warm blankets, monitors beeping gently around her. The room felt fragile, quiet, hopeful. Emily moved closer, brushing a strand of hair from the child's forehead. Her skin was still pale, but her breathing was steadier. "You're safe now," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Minutes passed before the girl's eyelids fluttered. Slowly her eyes opened, confused, frightened, searching. Emily instantly leaned in. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're in the hospital. You're safe." The girl blinked slowly, trying to understand. Her lips parted, dry and trembling, and for a moment Emily feared she couldn't speak. Then, barely audible, the girl breathed a single word. "Valor?" Emily froze. A shock ran through her chest. The girl's eyes filled with tears, small shoulders trembling beneath the blanket. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. Emily gently held her down. "He's here," she said softly. "He's safe. He brought you to us." The girl's face relaxed, a faint smile forming despite the pain. "He didn't leave me," she whispered. Emily swallowed hard. "No, he didn't." The child squeezed Emily's fingers, clinging to the reassurance. "I want to see him," she murmured, her voice cracking with longing. Emily hesitated. The dog was still recovering, hooked to IV fluids and barely conscious. But she saw the fear in the girl's eyes, the desperate need for the only one she trusted. "Let me check on him," Emily promised. The girl nodded weakly, eyes closing again from exhaustion. As Emily stepped out of the room, she found nurses gathered near Valor's stretcher. He was conscious now, though barely, lifting his head any time a door opened. His ears perked when he sensed Emily approaching. Despite the pain, he tried to stand again. Emily knelt beside him, tears finally slipping free. "She's awake," she whispered. Valor's tail thumped weakly against the mattress. She asked for you. The dog forced himself onto his elbows, trembling violently with effort. Emily shook her head. No, no, don't move. I'll bring her. Valor's eyes softened, but he refused to lie back down until Emily gently pressed a hand to his chest. I promise, she whispered. You'll see her. Only then did he relax, exhaling shakily. Emily stood, glancing between the two rooms. One child fighting for strength, one dog fighting through pain, all bound by a loyalty deeper than words. Detectives arrived at the hospital before sunrise, summoned by the evidence discovered in the forest and the girl's condition. Emily guided them toward the back entrance where the rope, footprints, and broken flashlight had been found. Search teams were already combing through the woods when one detective approached Emily. The footprints leading away from the clearing were fresh, he said. Whoever did this didn't get far. The dog, Valor, perked his ears at the detective's tone, recognizing the shift in atmosphere. Even injured, he remained alert, sensing the urgency hanging thick in the air. In the forest, officers followed the heavy footprints through thick underbrush until they reached a crude campsite hidden behind fallen logs. Torn fabric scraps, discarded food wrappers, and a half-burned jacket lay scattered across the ground. One officer lifted the jacket, revealing a name stitched inside, evidence left behind in the suspect's panic. He left in a hurry, the lead detective muttered. He knew Valor was on his trail. Moments later, the K9 unit arrived with their dogs, joining the search. The officers exchanged determined nods. The hunt had officially begun. The trail led deeper into the woods until officers found a narrow path carved through tall brush. At the end of it sat a small abandoned shed, its door hanging crooked. Inside, footprints coated the dust-covered floor, and a single lantern lay shattered. Then they found something chilling, a cell phone, cracked but still functional. An officer scrolled through its recent messages, eyes widening. He planned to move her again, he said, tonight, before anyone found her. The officers didn't need more motivation. With the evidence secured, they expanded the search radius, determined to capture the man before he fled the area. Back at the hospital, Emily updated Valor about the unfolding investigation, as if he understood every word. And in many ways he did. His ears twitched at the sound of police radios crackling nearby. Suddenly, a voice sounded through a detective's walkie-talkie. Suspect located. Repeat, suspect located. Attempting to flee on foot. Valor immediately tried to rise, legs shaking beneath him. He let out a sharp bark, eyes burning with the instinct to finish what he started. Emily pressed her hands against his shoulders, holding him steady. You've done enough, she whispered, though she knew he yearned to protect the girl until the end. Minutes later, officers radioed the final update. Suspect in custody. Repeat, suspect is in custody. Relief washed through the hospital hallway. Emily exhaled shakily, tears stinging her eyes. Valor's body finally relaxed, as if his mission was truly complete. The detective approached Emily with gratitude in his voice. Your dog saved her life and helped us catch the person responsible. Emily looked at Valor, who watched the surgical room door with tired devotion. He's not my dog, she whispered. He's hers. And as the officers carried the criminal away, one truth became undeniable. Valor hadn't just rescued the girl, he had delivered justice. The quiet beeping of the monitors filled the recovery room as the little girl slowly drifted back into consciousness. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she turned her head slightly, wincing from the soreness in her neck. Emily was already at her bedside, offering a reassuring smile. You're safe, she whispered gently. The girl blinked, trying to remember where she was. Her gaze wandered around the room. White walls, soft lights, blankets tucked neatly around her. But something was missing. Her breathing quickened. Where's Valor? She whispered, voice trembling. Emily leaned closer, brushing her thumb gently across the girl's hand. He's here at the hospital, she said. He's resting. The girl shook her head weakly, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. I need him, she murmured. He stayed with me. He didn't let them take me. Her voice cracked, panic threatening to rise again. Emily squeezed her hand firmly. It's okay, sweetheart. He's not far. He's safe. And he's been waiting. The girl's trembling eased slightly, but her eyes remained filled with longing. She tried sitting up, but the pain made her gasp, and Emily gently supported her. "Easy," Emily said softly. "You've been through so much." The girl looked up at her, voice barely audible. Can I see him, please?" The plea wasn't dramatic. It was raw, fragile, and honest. Emily felt her heart twist. This wasn't a simple request. It was the one thing grounding the girl to safety and hope. Emily nodded slowly. "I'll bring him," she promised. "But you must stay still. Let your body heal." The girl nodded weakly, settling back against the pillows. Her small fingers clung to Emily's hand as if afraid she might disappear. "He saved me," she whispered. "I was so scared, and he never left." Emily brushed a hand through her hair, voice softening even further. "He didn't leave you for a second," she murmured. "Even when he was hurt, he kept going." The girl closed her eyes, breathing shakily. "I didn't think anyone would find me," she whispered. "But he did." Valor came. Each word carried the weight of everything she had endured. Emily felt tears sting her eyes but held them back. She leaned close and kissed the girl's forehead gently. "I'll bring him," she promised again. The girl's fingers loosened slightly, trusting her. Emily stood and stepped out of the room, exhaling shakily. Down the hall, Valor lay on his stretcher, eyes half open. But the moment he heard the door creak, he lifted his head. Emily smiled through the emotion, tightening her chest. "She's asking for you," she whispered. Valor tried to rise despite his injuries, and Emily realized nothing in the world could keep them apart now. Emily slowly wheeled Valor's stretcher down the quiet hospital hallway, her hands steady but her heart racing. The German shepherd, though weak, lifted his head every few seconds, eyes focused ahead as if he already sensed where he was going. "Easy, boy," Emily whispered. "Almost there." His ears twitched at the sound of the little girl's monitor beeping faintly from the room ahead. Despite IV lines and bandages wrapped around his leg, Valor tried again to push himself upright. Emily gently guided him back down. "She's waiting for you," she murmured. When the stretcher entered the doorway, the girl's eyes opened instantly as if her heart recognized his presence before her mind did. Her breath caught and tears filled her eyes. "Valor," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. Valor responded with a low emotional whimper, lifting himself despite the pain. Emily quickly supported him, helping him rise just enough to place his paws gently at the edge of the bed. The girl let out a tiny sob of relief, brushing her fingers through his fur with shaking hands. The moment Valor felt her touch, his entire body softened. His tail thumped weakly against the stretcher, every ounce of tension melting into affection. The girl leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, whispering words no one else could hear. Emily stepped back, giving them space, tears quietly blurring her own vision. Nurses who had gathered at the door watched silently, moved by the bond between the wounded child and the dog who had refused to abandon her, even when his own life was at risk. The girl stroked his cheek with fragile fingertips. "You came back," she whispered. Valor nudged her gently, pressing his nose into her palm. Emily swallowed hard. "He never left you," she said softly. "He followed you through the forest, protected you, carried you, and then brought you to us." The girl nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wasn't scared when he was there," she murmured. "Even when everything hurt, he stayed with me." Her voice cracked, and Valor responded with another soft whine, pressing closer. Emily approached slowly, placing a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "He's safe now, and so are you." The girl leaned back against her pillows, keeping one hand on Valor's head. "Can he stay?" she asked, fear flickering again. Emily smiled warmly. "He's not going anywhere." Valor rested beside her bed, eyes finally closing, not out of exhaustion alone, but out of peace. For the first time since entering the forest, he felt the mission was complete, and the girl, with her tiny hand gripping his fur, finally felt safe enough to fall asleep. Morning sunlight spilled gently through the hospital windows as Dr. Harris stepped into the room, his expression soft and warm. The girl was still sleeping peacefully, her hand resting on Valor's fur. The dog slept too, chest rising steadily, finally free from fear. Emily stood at the foot of the bed, watching them with a mixture of relief and awe. "They made it," the doctor said quietly. Emily nodded, tears gathering, because he wouldn't give up. The doctor stepped closer, examining the girl's chart. "It's a miracle she survived, and an even greater miracle that he did." Later that morning, hospital staff gathered outside the room as police officers arrived with official statements. One officer stepped forward, addressing the small group. "K9 Valor didn't just save her life," he said. "He gave us the trail we needed to find the suspect. Without him, this case would still be open." Emily felt pride swell in her chest. The little girl stirred awake, blinking at the officers. Valor lifted his head too, sensing the shift in energy. Emily leaned in. "They're here because of you both," she whispered. The officer approached the bed, kneeling beside the girl with a gentle smile. "You're very brave," he said softly. The girl shook her head, touching Valor's ear. "He's the brave one," she whispered. Valor nudged her hand, almost as if embarrassed by the attention. The officer chuckled. "Well, we agree." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver badge charm. "This is for him," he said, clipping it gently to Valor's collar, "for extraordinary bravery." Emily's eyes filled instantly. The girl's smile trembled with emotion as she whispered, "My hero." News soon spread throughout the hospital. Staff, patients, even visitors gathered near the hallway to catch a glimpse of the legendary dog who had carried a wounded child through the forest to safety. Nurses brought treats, children drew pictures of Valor, and adults wiped their eyes quietly. Emily watched as the little girl sat up with help, her hand never leaving Valor's fur. "What happens now?" she asked, timidly. Emily crouched beside her. "Now you heal," she said gently, "and he heals with you." The girl nodded, leaning into the dog who had saved her life. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting warm golden light across the room, the girl whispered something to Emily. "Can he stay with me?" Valor lifted his head, looking between them. Emily smiled softly. "I think he already decided that." And just before the video ended, a message appeared on the screen. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another amazing story of courage, loyalty, and hope. Valor rested his head gently on the girl's lap. Proof that sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They walk on 4 paws.